Yo, what's going on YouTube? Raz here, coming back at you with another deck profile, deck tech. This time we are covering Ghired, Conclave Exile. Ghired is a very simple but very sort of common sort of archetype where it's tokens. We're not going to be going wide, we're going to be going tall with this deck, populating a whole bunch, getting his effect off multiple times. If we can, populate more than once during a turn, benefiting off of each populate, and just basically swinging in for big damage. Without further ado, let's go ahead and get into the deck profile. So we start off with not really too much going on. We'll start with the creatures, as always. We got few mana dorks here, which you probably have seen multiple times. You got 5. I don't really think you need more than 5. They do basic mana dork things. You tap them for mana. They help give you mana fixing and get out all of your big stuff. I run 5 really just because, you need, since you're playing a lot of big spells in this deck, you need some, and 5 I felt was the perfect number. Next up, I'm going to just say we run the Soul Sisters, or Soul Sister, Essence Sister, the Sisters. You only run one of each, or two of these. You could run Soul's Attendant, but most games doesn't really matter. And then we also run, next up, we're just going to go into sort of some utilities and whatnot. You play 1 copy of Grumgully. This just turns all of your rhinos that you generate off of Ghired into 5/5 rhinos. Pretty good, I think. Enters with a +1/+1. Pretty good. And then it can't be Heartless Act or anything like that. Next up, we play a card I at first did not think that was going to be very good, but in testing and playing, it is very good. Giant Aedophage. It's a 7/7 trample for 7, 5 and a green, or 5 and 2 green, and it basically says whenever it deals combat damage, you create a token copy, and then each one is the same. So each one, whenever it deals combat damage, including trample damage, it creates a copy of itself. It multiplies, you populate. It gets dumb. It really does. Next up, a card I haven't really been too into, but I play it anyway because it helps with mana, is Grand Warlord Radha, I think is how you pronounce it. 2 and Gruel. Whenever one or more creatures attack, you add red or green mana in any combination for each creature that attacks. And you get to spend it until your end phase, so it's mana. Who's going to complain about mana? And you're going to be needing a lot of it with how many big spells you're going to be playing. Next up is Maurici, Breaker of the Coils. 1 and Nea. It has a passive where your opponents can't cast spells during your combat step, or during combat, so it helps with just swinging in, not having to worry about, Psych Rift, protection, indestructible, fogs, anything like that. It just says, no, you can't do that, I'm just going to swing, and if you have anything, it better be an ability, or else you can't do it. And then it also adds a goading effect for each creature. Whenever creature deals combat damage, you goad creatures your opponents control. Pretty good. Not really. In all honesty, I might take this card out, just because it hasn't really been doing much. The only thing that it's good for is really keeping combats clean and not having to worry. So it offers some sort of protection there. Next up, I play Goblin and Archmancer. Makes things cheaper. Things are really expensive with this deck, as you can tell. So anything to make things cheaper, definitely welcome. Next up, I play 2 controversial cards. Controversial in the sense that when I told people that I run them or play them, they looked at me and they're like, well, why are you doing that? There's so many better options. I like them. They're fine with me. If people don't like them, it's whatever. And that's Archetype of Courage and Archetype of Aggression. Archetype of Courage and Archetype of Aggression both give an effect. Courage gives first strike and Aggression gives trample. But they both have the effect of your opponent's creatures lose that ability, and they can't gain or have that ability. So it removes trample from all your opponent's creatures, as well as first strike, and they can't have them or gain them. So shuts off a lot of decks, shuts off a lot of abilities, or a lot of cards that give those abilities, and in all honesty, more for me, less for my opponents. It's fine with me. And if they're enchantment creatures, it's fine. I'm not too worried about it, really. So next up, we have Dragon Master Outcast. This card is pretty great. I like it a lot. Gives me big, bulky dragons. Makes things really dumb. You only need 6 lands, and when this comes out, more than likely you'll have it. If not, you'll get it eventually. Next up is a creature that I didn't know about because I sort of looked over it. It's Tuk Tuk Rubble Fort. It has Defender and Haste 0/3 for 3 mana. Gives all your creatures haste. It's a wall. It's just something to give haste, really. And because it's, a common, it's pretty good. Can go in a lot of decks. Next up, we run a few generators in, or at least a few more generators in like token copies. We run Kiki-Jiki, the new Jaxus, the Troublemaker. I really like this card for multiple reasons. And then we also run Feldon of the Third Path. Basically, these guys just make token copies of things, so you can create rhinos. Jaxus, the token that it creates, gets destroyed and you draw a card at the end step, so it's more benefit for you, really, and that's fine by me. Next up, we play a copy of Kazul, Tyrant of the Cliffs. It reads, whenever a creature attacks you, for each creature, your opponent can pay 3. If not, you get a 3/3 red ogre. And in all honesty, if your opponents come at you with tiny creatures, it's fine. It's 5 mana. It's expensive, but for three mana to not get a ogre, your opponents better have a lot of mana on the field. Next up, we got Quartzwood Crasher. Pretty great with the ability to have trample. For all the trample damage, or all the damage you deal to creatures with trample, you create an XX, where X is the total amount of damage, and it just comes out, and if you have haste, it just comes out swinging. Or it doesn't come out swinging, but it has haste, so it can block, and generally, these tokens can get pretty big. Next up, for draw power in creatures, we play a copy of Toski and a copy of Oran Frostfang. It just, whenever it deals combat damage, obviously you draw a card for each creature. This does the same thing, but it gives my attacking creatures Death Touch, which is really good. So if I swing in with tiny creatures, and they have Death Touch, doesn't matter, you still die. So, pretty good. I like them both. And, yeah, not really much to say about that. Next up is a card that I've fallen in love with is in this deck. It has saved me so many times I can't even count. I had it gain me 60 life in 1 turn, and that is Trostani, Selesnya's Voice. Whenever a creature enters my battlefield, I gain life equal to the creature's toughness, and then for 3 mana and tap it, I can populate. So with rhinos running around that sometimes can be 5/5s, I gain 5 life for each time a rhino comes into the battlefield. Yeah, you can probably see where this gets pretty silly, and how I've fallen in love with that card, hopefully. Next up, a card that I only ran in Niv Mizzet, that recently I've put in the deck, is Harmonic Prodigy. It's nice, it has prowess, but that's not what we care about it. The only reason we care about this card is if, for all of the Ghired triggers that we do, whenever it attacks, we create 2 tokens instead of 1. And that also goes with a couple other effects, that we can do with, just to double up and do silly stuff. So, pretty good. If you have shamans or wizards in your deck, definitely recommend running that card. And that is it for the creatures. Pretty creature-heavy deck. I like it where it's at, so that's that. Next up, we're going to move into the artifacts. I run a copy of Swiftfoot and Lightning Greaves. Protection. I don't like my commander getting hit. I don't like my stuff getting hit. That's vital. And usually whenever I play this deck, people usually go, oh, kill the Ghired. It shuts down his whole deck. Well, not with this. It gives Hexproof Shroud, haste, and allows me to do cool stuff when things come out. So, pretty good. I like it. Next up, we got a copy of Eldrazi Monument. This card just reads, gives all my creatures +1/+1 and flying and indestructible. Pretty great. Little bit of evasion. The only downside is it costs 5 mana and you sacrifice a creature, which I've never found a problem with, because you're usually populating multiple times during a turn, and it happens during your end step. So typically, the way things can go is you usually populate two to 5 times, sack one of those generated tokens, and you get to keep it on the field for however long you want. And it's non-legendary, so yeah, pretty cool. Not that it really matters in a singleton format, but anyway, moving on. We're gonna move on to our artifact mana rocks. We're just gonna go out with it. Play 1 copy of Sol Ring, obligatory. We play 1 Talisman of Conviction, and then we play 3 Signets, 1 of each that we can fit in here. The reason I'm not playing the Talismans is because they only tap for colorless, and I don't like paying the life for the colored. I'd rather just filter it into one of my Signets and then just make it into a color that I need. Pretty good. And then Sol Ring, obligatory. It's Sol Ring. Play Sol Ring. Next up, I play 1 copy of Bow of Nylea. Attacking creatures get Death Touch. Pretty good for 3 mana. Pretty easy, self-explanatory. Its tap effect I never really use. You can for 2 and tap it. You can put a +1/+1 on it, deal 2 damage to a creature with flying if you want to get around that, or you can gain 3 life. Or you can put stuff from your graveyard to the bottom of your deck in any order. Pretty cool. Has a lot of utility with the effect if you want to. Typically, I just recycle stuff if I had to, but Death Touch is really why I run it in here, and it's like $3 at the time of recording this. Next up, I play a copy of Mirari's Wake and Intangible Virtue, and Beastmaster Ascension. Basically, these are just anthems. Beastmaster Ascension, you attack with 7 dudes, everything gets +5/+5. This gives +1/+1 and Vigilance to all my creatures. Vigilance is cool because it allows you to keep blockers up as well. And then Mirari's Wake just gives +1/+1, but it also allows your effects to, or your mana, or your lands to tap for 2 mana instead of 1. So it sort of helps keep your mana alive, and gives you a lot more of it, I'd say, with the double, so you don't have to tap as much, so you can leave some open mana, and then if it gets popped, well, you still have all that open mana that you can play whenever it gets destroyed. So those are kind of my anthem effects that I have, that I really like. Next up, we have some haste makers that are enchantments. Mainly, we have a copy of Fervor, Rhythm of the Wild, and Fires of Yavimaya. Shout out to everyone that told me to run Fires of Yavimaya and Fervor. Never heard of these cards before. Fixing this deck. And Rhythm of the Wild is great because you can give it a +1/+1 counter if you already have a haste maker on the field with Riot, and it also prevents things from being countered. So if you're playing blue and people really like to counter your stuff, well, sorry, gotta remove my enchantment first before you say no to my creatures. So go ahead, waste 2 cards to stop 1 creature, have fun. But yeah, three haste makers, plenty fine. I've never had a game where I didn't have haste, in all honesty, with 3 creatures or 3 enchantments in my tuk. Yeah, never not see haste. Pretty good stuff. Next up, a card I really didn't think about putting in, but I left it in here because I just like to bring out creatures. Impact Tremors. This card does some stuff. It doesn't do a lot because we don't really go wide. We can go sort of wide. We really like to go tall more. But for every time a creature comes out, it deals a damage to each opponent. I mean, it's free damage for just doing the thing that you normally do, which is get tokens out. And that's really it. Next up, I play a copy of Cathar's Crusade. I did not really know about this card before fixing this deck. And ever since I put it in this deck, I've had this card whenever it comes out and I create tokens. Everything gets at least +1/+1, +2/+2 with Harmonic Prodigy, and it does really silly things whenever things come out. Yeah, It's cool. I like it a lot. Um, Next up, just a support card, Growing Ranks. At the beginning of my upkeep, I populate. Free value. Free value. Next up, we play a copy of War Cadence. Um, I've seen this card do silly things in people's Krankos decks. Um, and this is just basically to keep your stuff from being blocked. So you can go in as hard as you want, not have to worry about, blockers if you have like really big creatures on your opponent's side and you just want to kill them. You pay however much you need into X, pay the red, and they can't block unless they pay the X. So, yeah, really, really strong for just evasion, protection, and keeping you, giving you that nice peace of mind. Uh, Felidar Retreat is in this deck mainly for the +1/+1 effect. Landfall doesn't really work very much in this deck because you don't have any sort of like Azusa's or Dryad of the Elysian Grove or anything like that. They allow you to play multiple lands per turn, but it's a land per turn and it's a +1/+1 counter on all your creatures. If you have more than like 3, or if you have like 3 more, I guess, you get pretty good value out of it. So can't complain there. Free value, free value. Next up, I play not really a plethora, but my fair share of ramp. I play a copy of Kodama's Reach, copy of Explore, Migration Path, Farseek, and Cultivate. I call these staples, minus Explore. Explore's not really a staple. I'd say the other 4 are. The only reason I play Explore is because it's 2 mana, and you draw a card. If you don't have a land, you still draw a card for 2 mana. It's fine. Next up, we're going to move into sort of some removal. We play a few removal spells in Hull Breach, Destructive Revelry, and Naturalize. These, I only run 3 in all honesty because there's generally 4 people at a table. Other people are going to get rid of stuff, and I'm really only interested in getting rid of the biggest threats to myself because generally I can deal with basically everything else. No matter which way you put it. So 3 is enough, at least for me. If you want to run more, you can. There are plenty more removal, and you can also run Aura Shards if you want to. That's up to you, though. Next up, some protection in the form of Druid's Deliverance and Rootborn Defenses. Rootborn Defenses is pretty good. Allows your stuff to be indestructible, and whenever you populate, the populate token also becomes indestructible, so you get a free indestructible creature that doesn't go away, which is pretty cool. And then a fog that allows you to populate so you don't take any damage, and then you get a free creature out of it. Pretty good. That's all there is to it. Next up, some removal as far as just sort of non-generic removal. Play a copy of Beast Within and Generous Gift. For a long time, I didn't like these cards because they gave your opponent a creature, but after seeing how much the creature really doesn't matter because we're going to have even bigger creatures than them, it's pretty insignificant. They're probably going to jump it to one of our creatures, and that's fine with us. And these are non-generic, or these are generic removal, so you can destroy lands, artifacts, enchantments, creatures, planeswalkers. It's really whatever's a permanent that's a threat on the board. Next up, I play a copy of Path to Exile. It probably should be Swords because you gaining life is better than getting a land, but I have Path. If you want to run Swords, go ahead. You're more than welcome to. Next up, I play a copy of Return of the Wildspeaker. This is great for our board, getting most of our stuff +3/+3, or we get to draw equal to our biggest creature, which more than likely is going to be at least four cards. So five mana for 4 cards, pretty good. Next up, I play a copy of Overwhelming Stampede. Oh my gosh, I cannot tell you how many times just having this card in a deck, just you play the card, and because you have big creatures or whatever, your stuff just kills people. It's not Craterhoof, but I mean, I bought this for $2, and most of the time it gives me at least +7/+7 in trample, which I mean, Craterhoof does basically the same thing, but with the amount of creatures, and since we're not going wide, we're going tall. Overwhelming Stampede is a fine addition in this deck. Definitely should run more and more green decks, I think. I only run one board wipe, and that's Wrath of God. It's Wrath of God. You know what it does. Next up, I play one Planeswalker, and that's Garruk Primal Hunter. It's token generation. You get to draw. You also can create a worm or two, if you want to with the ultimate. So it's just a general. In most Ghired decks and most token decks, it's almost always a staple. I see it in a lot of decks, so I consider it a staple. And with that, that's everything for the most part. Now we're going to move into lands. On the last video, I saw a lot of people complaining about tap lands and whatnot. And you know what? It's with my mana and my mana fixing and whatnot, I haven't noticed a problem. In all honesty, it slows down your game, yeah, but it doesn't, for me at least, I don't seem to notice it. And if I do, usually I have a brick hand anyway. So I'm just going to go ahead and move into lands. For the non-top lands, I play Command Tower, Rogue's Passage, the Selesnya multi-face land, Fabled Passage, and Sungrass Prairie. You can run more if you want to, run less. Typically, I just say run whatever lands you want. Don't take my word as like the final say. This is just what I run. Give you kind of an idea of what I run and maybe help you figure out what you should be running. Now we get into the cringy parts, which is the tap lands. And yeah, there's quite a few in here too. So get ready to cringe. So mainly we play Jungle Shrine. I haven't gotten the new Capenna Nail land, but that will probably be swapped out, or I'll just add it to the deck. We also play Path of Ancestry, 2 of the 3 temples, Temple of Triumph, Temple of Plenty. They're scry lands, they're pretty good. Allow you to fix the top card of your deck if you want it, or plan for that next card as well. And then we also play Alpine Meadow, Highland Forest, and Arctic Treeline. More tap lands. We play Copy of Cinderglade and Canopy Vista, as well as 2 of the new land cycles from Innistrad. The new Innistrad, I like them. They've been generally turn 3 lands. You're gonna probably find something else to play for 2 turns and then play this, so it comes in untapped. It's fine. Like I said, this is not really final, but just sort of give you an idea of maybe if you're building or need help, some ideas on what to put in. And then the rest are really basics. So we play a plethora of forests, mainly because our main color is green in this deck, and we need quite a bit of forest to help us cast all of our good spells. Next up, we play another chunky bit of white. Again, white's another big color. We do play quite a bit of red, but all of our red is basically supplemented in our mana dorks as well as our mana rocks and our dual lands. So I didn't really feel the need to play red, but we do have 2 red as well, in case you're wondering. So we do play 2 red, just because if you need Fabled Passage and you don't have a red, well, here's a red to get you in the game. Or if you need like Kodama's Reach or Cultivate for a red, you can search out a red. But for the most part, that's really it. And that's basically the deck. I've been enjoying the deck a lot. I've won several games with it. I don't win all of them. It's not really supposed to be a high level deck as well, but for the most part, I really like it. I like what it does. I like what it's done for me. It's a lot of fun to play, and that's really all I built it for. Feel free to add or subtract. And to those that are wondering why I didn't put the Doubling Season, Parallel Lives, Anointed Procession in here, well, I mean, go look at the prices, and that'll kind of explain to you why. So until they get reprinted, I'm probably just going to leave them out, because the deck runs fine by themselves. Putting them in is just a win more card for each of them, and to be honest, I'm fine with the way the deck runs anyway. Shout outs to everyone that helped me build the deck on Reddit and all my real life friends. Shout outs to everyone that supplied me cards or whatever and helped me with everything. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe, do all the things. Share the video with your friends. And I'll see you guys in the next video. Until next time, guys, Arcanine Squad, roll out.